Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, and yes, I'm aware of the overlap, let me fix that. Better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3 good brothers. Ha 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 ha. We have one half of the Valley of the Judged on Thursdays, and the man behind Distorted Illumination, good brother Monarch.
Good to be here this week.
Who's taking a day off from getting in fights with the Grim Reaper.
Not been so bad the last few months.
And our resident doctor, according to TV, good brother Novell.
Let's have monsters have the precious.
God damn it.
I am vying for the Bane of Your Snuffing Existence title.
You're not getting it. And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Nobody lets Dr. Novell. I'll have the precious, and it is all mine.
He thinks he can do Gollum. I can do Gollum. By the way, Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you, love your friends and family. I think that's a better message than anything else I could give today.
But I like to make analogies in a lot of my work. Not just here when it comes to these shows, but when it comes to reviews, which I do intend on bringing back soon. Or the various forms of commentary that I've made, where I try to make analogies or comparative statements. And one major one that's been used as a shorthand for when somebody goes through a gradual but significant transformation in their approach over time is the road to Damascus. The path that Paul took from wanting to persecute to switching sides, essentially. I am aware that is a vast simplification, but I am not a religious scholar, so work with me on that. But that
not to mention we don't have time to go into that parable.
Yeah.
If we want to be pedantic, it's not technically a parable, but...
Yeah, let's not get in on the pedantry right now, Doc.
I know.
I have red hot irons for certain pedants right now.
Yeah. But when it comes to the studio known as Hello Games, the road to Damascus is a perfect analogy for what we've been seeing from them for over the past 8 years. Because for this particular episode of GeekWatch, we have to talk about their biggest contribution, Joe Danger. No, just kidding. Of course I'm talking about No Man's Sky. But this is something that ended up cropping back up since a few months back it was revealed they were working on a new project. And
Light No Fire.
Yep. Which seems to be a more fantasy take on what they were already doing. And they specifically chose to not put out a release date.
Smart. Very smart.
And we had a bit of a laugh over them learning from their mistakes, because the reason why I use the Road to Damascus analogy when it comes to Hello Games is, consider where the mindset was even a year after release of No Man's Sky. to where it is now, where it's more or less made a turnaround, going from the internet's biggest punching bag at that time to a game that has a dedicated fan base to the point where they are begging Hello Games, please just put out a paid DLC. We will pay you. No, free updates.
So, if I might take this for a second, Monk.
Go ahead.
Give a little of the background. When Hello Games was first pitching No Man's Sky as a game, they were pitching things like an exceptionally expansive universe full of large and unique, interesting things where discoveries would never be the same unless everybody was on the same universe. Where there were going to be quadrillions of stars and all of it procedurally generated. This was back before procedural generation as a word became, instead of a positive buzzword, a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, this was not procedural generation as a buzzword for them. They were using it as a tool for sure. And they have definitely iterated on it. But they made very large, very expansive promises in their tech demos and in what they wanted the game to do. And on launch, not even a tenth of what was promised was there. The large amount of planets was really the only thing. But things were bland. Things repeated a lot, as tends to happen with poor procedural generation. And worst of all, one of the things they promised was a launch thing that people could encounter each other in the universe if they were close enough, was not true. There was infamously a time where two streamers were streaming No Man's Sky at the same time, went to the same planet, to the same spot, and could not see each other. And Sean Murray, infamously, because Twitter is short form and he couldn't give a full clarifying statement in the first tweet, pointed out how amazing it was that two players were able to meet up in the same place. The implication then being that they actually saw each other when they didn't. He did later clarify that, Twitter being short form, he didn't mean they literally met each other and saw each other, that they were able to confirm they were both in the same place, just not in the same instance. Combined with numerous other things, like some fairly boring gameplay loops, some fairly unimaginative biomes and environments, and not a lot to do other than discover some things and then travel to the center of the universe as fast as you could, were really detractors for No Man's Sky. They made the game boring, repetitive. And while there was some cool stuff, like, I will never ever say that No Man's Sky was a game that couldn't do the transition from planet to space really well, because holy shit, even back then you could fly up and then you'd eventually fly out of Atmo and be in space. There'd be no loading screens, no loading gates, you're just there. And the same going back down to a planet.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't fly as freely as you might expect in Atmo, and you had specified places you had to land, and resources were really boring to get. And then once you got rich enough to just buy resources at whatever the nearest space station was, it was even more boring. And that really, really damaged Hello Games as a company, and No Man's Sky specifically as a game. But Sean Murray, the head of Hello Games, didn't give up. He understood that they didn't reach those promises. And he wanted to make those promises true. And I think in a certain way, no matter what may have been in his head, that he and Hello Games were going to make good on those promises come hell or high water, no matter how hard and how long it took. And so the iterative process began. Over the years, No Man's Sky started adding content. Small things here and there at first. Some revamps to how space attacks and stuff worked, because they were very boring and very rote and very scripted. Some tweaks here and there to the crafting, to getting all of your resources, to advancing through the main story, which is of course getting to the center of the universe and then resetting. That was another thing that everybody's like, that's boring. You just reset. There's nothing, no big revelation, and that really was boring.
Yeah,
And it started getting more ambitious, I guess is the best word.
Mm-hmm.
We start getting ghost ships and battle stations, and the multiplayer was, I think, probably the clinching point. When they finally got the Nexus and the multiplayer hub and the way for everybody to come in and interact and have fun, I think at that point, No Man's Sky had shifted enough that it started gaining traction again.
There's also the fact that each of the major updates, each of the X.00s, have their own little title, their own little name. The most recent one, of course, being Worlds, which was update 5.0. And
even some of the smaller updates had names. There's been, I think, 24 named expansions.
Yeah, which is why when I found that collage of all the different splash images for the named updates, I told John we have to use this as the background. It's too perfect.
Yeah, but I think at this point, the best thing to point out about what No Man's Sky has become as an overview is this game now has so many different ways to interact with it. The primary gameplay loop of follow the mystery to the center of the universe is something you can avoid entirely for literally hundreds of hours. There's base building, there's battleships, there's a quest to go get your own living organic being that is a battleship, and it's a long involved quest. It can be anywhere from 10 to 15 hours. There's wars, there's pirate wars you can get involved in, there's attacks and mechs and animal taming and yeah, I can continue to add until I'm blue in the face. But you can go around and do so many different things in this game that are not journey to the center of the universe. And on top of that, you can do it with your fucking friends.
Yeah. There was also there's one other thing that I definitely did want to bring up that some people were well aware of, but a lot of people skipped out on. And that was the Waking Titan ARG. Which was an attempt to try and expand the conceptual lore with this idea of the world of No Man's Sky being this simulation created by Atlas. I am, of course, vastly simplifying it because it was an ARG. It was a long ARG that was made of several seasons that ended up going for about 2 years. Season 1 was composed of 3 phases. First one came out in May 28th, 2017. The third phase came out on August 5th of the same year. And with what was called Season 2, which was phases 4 through 6, that started on December 28th of 2017 and ended on July 20th of 2018. Each of the phases had a certain date frame that they worked with, along with integrating social media as well as part of the ARG, because that's part of the appeal of ARGs is the kayfabe of it all. That and a collective mystery. It was done as a tie-in to Atlas Rises and Next. But if you had to guess, when would you say was around the time that the meme of "it's free update time" came to be?
You know, give me a second. Let me go look at the No Man's Sky update list. I really think I'm actually on their release log page, which, by the way, the scroll bar on this is very tiny. Just so everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
I think its free update time probably would have been around Atlas Rises. Because you had the patches, and then you hit the first big update, Foundation, which was base building.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get Pathfinder, which was planetary vehicles, base sharing, you know, ships and weapon specializations, a permadeath mode, stuff like that. And then you know, in between each of these, you have small patches to address any issues that may have come up with these games. But then you hit Atlas Rises, which overhauled the central story, gave us portals, a procedural mission system, improvements to the trade and system economies, joint exploration, which was where multiplayer really took off, and more. This is probably where the meme of, oh, it's free update time really started. Because then you hit No Man's Sky next, which was the full multiplayer experience, with unlimited base building, freighter armadas, and also where we finally moved on from just PC and PS4 to also including the Xbox One.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept going and kept going. Then the Abyss hits, and then Visions, and then Beyond, and it just goes and goes and goes. And from there, it was just like, oh yeah, it's free update time. Oh, Synthesis is here. Oh, free update time. Living Ship is here. Free update. Exomech is here. Free update. More full cross-platform play. The cross-play update. Desolation, which had the ghost ships. Origins, which expanded the universe and made things more varied. Origins was a really big deal because all of a sudden, the boring, oh, I've seen this planet 12 million times thing was a lot less. Then they had some Halloween updates. They had Next Generation. And it just goes on and on and on. I'm still scrolling up. I'm not halfway up the page yet, just so everybody knows. Okay, I hit the halfway point at Prisms.
Mm-hmm.
And then Prisms is 3.5. And then we have Frontiers. And then we have Expedition, that's Expedition number 3. Then we have Expedition number 4. And Expeditions Revisited. And Sentinel. It goes on and on and on. So the meme became self-perpetuating. But it's also a sign that Hello Games loves this game. Not only loves this game, but loves this this entire this community that's been built around it. Also, just so everybody knows, as of November 7th, so 3 days ago, you can try and get the Normandy in No Man's Sky again. Specifically the SR one.
Mm-hmm.
It was a limited time. There's a limited time expedition running for 2 weeks to claim the Normandy. Of course, there's also probably plenty of mods that just allow you to pull the Normandy out of code because, well, modders. And I'm also sure that Hello Games doesn't mind that.
Yeah, especially since there's whole videos that can be done about how modders have expanded a game's life cycle. Obviously, the ultimate example of that would be Doom.
Hold on a second. The last major update that wasn't just another expedition or an update to put crossplay onto a new platform was called Aquarius. Aquarius introduces a huge fishing system.
The meme of the mandatory fishing minigame continues to persist.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know how robust this fishing game is, If it is, I have a friend who will want to play No Man's Sky. No, he really likes fishing games, and the more robust the fishing game is, like if you have to use specific bait to catch specific fish, if you have to actually reel them in and do effort and stuff, the more he likes them.
Did he have Sega bass fishing back in the day?
Yes, in fact, he still has it.
It really is a burden being right all the time.
Hmm.
But
He's a great friend, so yeah, but think about that. This is an update that adds an entire... it's called Aquarius, so obviously it's about water. Adds fishing system, a dive suit, a bunch of new cooking, recipes for fish. Most people would not think that that is a major update. This makes all of the water in the game worth exploring.
Yeah.
Imagine quadrillions of worlds, some of which that are entire ocean planets, and now there's actually variety and a reason to explore them. Do you know just how much content they just added to the fucking game?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, and part of the reason I ended up finding the meme amusing is whenever one of these free updates would come up, obviously you'd see the meme images, but you'd see a bunch of people going, "Please just put out a paid DLC. We will give you money," which is the complete opposite of how this usually works.
I think my favorite version of that meme is they took the Rorschach line from Watchmen. You know, the teeming, disgusting masses look up from me from the gutters and say, "Please, Hello Games, let us pay you money." And I looked down at them and simply replied, "No."
And
they put Sean Murray's face over the Rorschach mask.
Which if you listen close, you can hear Alan Moore's blood pressure rising because he keeps insisting people weren't supposed to look up to or have that kind of attachment with Rorschach. Which
You can't really control that kind of thing. People will identify with whatever character they want to.
Well, it's the same issue that happened with the Starship Troopers movie. That they tried to make it an obvious, "Oh, you shouldn't like this jingoist bullshit," and then everybody likes this jingoist bullshit. Much the same way Alan Moore is like, "No, Rorschach's actually a really bad person." But the problem is that the way Rorschach is portrayed in his actions, sure, his rhetoric is fairly violent and terrible, and he has one of the darkest outlooks on the world he's in. But his actions are he's got convictions for his belief, and his belief is one of doing the right thing despite the fact that it might cause further harm.
also,
such as telling everybody
people are
what
going to
Dice
like
did.
an underdog. There's no getting around that.
Yes.
I'm all of a sudden reminded of when Big Idea made the bunny song for VeggieTales that it was supposed to be this horrible, awful song that children should never sing. And it was discussed as such in the show. And lo and behold, parents were writing letters complaining, "Oh, my kids are singing the song. Why'd you do this for?" Oops.
If you don't want people to sing it, don't make it catchy.
Basically.
But I think that particular attachment I can definitely see, because there was amidst all of the overpromising that Sean Murray did there before he disappeared off the face of the map for years. There is one particular thing that stood out to me, and that was him saying that he wanted to do a kind of science fiction that was less in the space opera kind of way and more in the style of science fiction that you would have seen in pulp books. Okay.
Which some of the stuff that you can do in No Man's Sky, you is absolutely pulp sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. Like, I could have swore Ray Bradbury was brought up as a point of reference, which
Nice.
definitely makes sense, because Bradbury, for those who don't know, is one of the OGest of OGs when it comes to early science fiction. Especially with stuff like the Martian Chronicles. Also, there is a part of me that wonders if Sean Murray was a big fan of the Traveler RPG. Not just because the player character is called a Traveler, but also because of the back and forth about 1Ls or 2Ls. But I'd say I feel like as time went on, and as the community developed, a lot of people came into it because of the fact that it was scratching an itch that a lot of space games in a similar vein attempted to, but hadn't gotten close.
And haven't since.
Yeah. The two big examples of trying to promise what No Man's Sky has gradually been doing is Freelancer, which had a whole host of problems and of course EVE Online. EVE Online it has its own brand of infamy, as people are very well aware. It's in a bit of limbo these days because it's owned by Pearl Abyss, but that's a whole other matter. And with other cases, there was always some kind of catch, or it was skewing towards one particular thing. Plus, as much as I enjoy, say, Elite Dangerous or the like, those are still leaning into space opera. I'd hesitate to call No Man's Sky a space opera.
Yeah.
Primarily because space operas tend to involve larger than life characters, and there isn't really any character in No Man's Sky that fits that.
At most, you could say Atlas itself.
Which, if that's the case, then you may as well go with the God Machine in 2001 as a larger than life character when it's not a character, it's a plot device.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the giant chocolate bar that we're talking about there?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I get for watching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory before 2001.
Which one? The original or the Depp one?
The Depp one, the one that was titled Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as opposed to the original was titled Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Ah. But I think something that I think didn't help matters early on when it came to No Man's Sky was there were a bunch of games that were guilty of what Mandalore calls cursed runes. Which is his shorthand for crafting, exploration, survival, early access. Basic.
I get that.
Huh?
I get that.
Yeah. Some might say, well, why would the failures of, say, Starforge or these other games be a factor? It's because shit rolls downhill. And when you have a bunch of games trying to promise this whole full exploration, build things and the like, and end up not being able to deliver for one reason or another, one high-profile failure or questionable setup can affect the perception of others. And I think the reason why because in any other circumstance, a failure as high profile as what No Man's Sky was when it launched would have just been shelved, and the studio either disband or do something else, or both. But that's not what ended up happening. They ended up sticking to it, and I think it's because of that attachment to that brand of science fiction. And it's to the point where the fan base has created their own particular groupings within space. The whole civilized space thing. Which was something that was completely organic to the game. I know one might look at them and say, "Isn't that no different than guilds in an MMO?" Not necessarily. I feel like comparing it to an MMO style guild would be selling it a little bit short.
Yeah.
Especially since each of them have their own little claimed stake on the map. Each of them run their own personal wikis. The areas that they have sway over vary depending on what platform you're dealing with. Some of them are cross-platform, some of them are not. And the thing, it's one of those things that, as I said, was organic to the whole experience. It was not put in by the developers. And that, as time has gone on, from what I've seen, and you can fill in the blanks on this, Zan. There's been an emphasis on creating a universe with the game more than anything else.
Making the universe feel more alive. Yes. Everything they add is something that would add to the content of what a universe is, rather than specific things to the characters. As I pointed out with Aquarius, they made it so that the water was something you'd want to explore and play in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's adding more to the sandbox. Basically, more sand and more buckets and more shovels and more tools in your sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
But it's had the added effect of making the universe actually feel alive.
Yeah. And obviously it took a long road, but on one hand there is that. On the other hand, I look at both this and what happened with Final Fantasy XIV with The Realm Reborn, and maybe it's just me, but it feels like a lot of people took the wrong lessons.
Yeah.
Because what I began to notice whenever certain high profile failures were coming about is that if you keep at it, you'll be able to turn it around, because that's what happened with these games. It's like, technically this is a case of technically correct is not the best kind of correct.
Yeah, this is a case where I would actually put it more in a position of not even wrong, because it misses the point so far and isn't even focusing on what's correct there.
Mm-hmm. And Doc Monarch, have I explained to you what not even wrong entails? I may have, but it may have been a while. So, not even wrong was a statement that was coined by physicist Wolfgang Pauli, who was infamous for how colorful he could be when taking apart somebody's sloppy research. He did not suffer fools gladly, would have a lot of very strong words, but those words were in German, so I don't know all of them. and I can't ask Cthulhu to translate for me. But it comes from a response to a paper submitted in a physics journal where he had said, and this is the rough translation was, not only is it not right, it's not even wrong, referring to a hypothesis that could not be proven or disproven simultaneously.
Is it like the kind of goofy thing, like, if God's all powerful, can he create a rock so heavy that he can't lift it?
Not really.
Yeah, that's more just an odd hypothetical philosophy kind of
I'm
question.
not sure.
I don't know if that's a good way to
Yeah,
describe
I
it,
was
but
gonna say, I
yeah,
don't
that's
think it would fall for that.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's again, it's a case where there's no way to prove or disprove a hypothesis. The rock so heavy you can't lift it, I can't really use because that's not a hypothesis.
That's a good point.
Hey, with a hypothesis, there's supposed to be a path to, okay, if I do these things, I'll be able to prove these hypotheses. If these things happen, then the hypothesis is disproven. One that is the not even wrong has neither of those. And Paulie had further stated, and again, this is the translation because he didn't speak English. What you said was so confused that one cannot tell whether it's nonsense or not. Which is probably one of the classier ways you can call someone on their bullshit. But in this particular case, I'm guessing the reason why you're saying that this falls into not even wrong is a lot of people look at the end result but don't look at the pathway to get there.
Yeah, they're just taking the most common, the most surface level common between everything that they see and going, oh, this must be the reason. There's no question actually being asked as to whether, oh, was this the reason? And there's no answer. There's no hypothesis to test, essentially. And because of that, there's what they're missing is that there was a bunch of love and commitment and this understanding of wanting to make it better, wanting to improve things further, wanting everything to, there's so much more that went into it. And
in the case of like a Realm Reborn, what preceded that was Yoshi P doing a massive apology tour.
Well, and the thing is, Yoshi P also actually tried to improve the original base game. And it was only after trying that for a patch or two that he realized this just isn't going to work, especially since like the engine they used wasn't very good, crystal tools and all that. And that
having a potted plant have as many polygons as a player character.
Yeah, that there was just too much that had gone wrong with it to for it to have it go right, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, Yoshi P said, hey, this isn't going to work as is. We need to make sure that this is going to work. So we're going to have to make a new game, essentially, is what he said.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is with a lot of people who took the wrong lessons, I've noticed that a lot of them don't have that same level of humility. That willingness to take the knocks, take the lumps in regards to this.
Mm-hmm.
and I even as recent as Concord, there were some people saying, well, if they do a revamp, then they can turn it around the way No Man's Sky did. Which one? That No Man's Sky's turnaround, I'd say, was over the course of at least 5 years. Probably less so, but it was over the course of several years.
No Man's Sky really started getting traction again, and again, this is actually nearer the lower amount. I would say it was either Atlas Rises or No Man's Sky Next, because Atlas Rises, like I said, overhauled the story, gave them portals, a procedural mission system, a bunch of improvements to in-game systems, started the multiplayer with joint exploration. And then No Man's Sky Next was the full multiplayer with base building, freighter armadas, etc. It is either Atlas Rises or Next where it really started getting traction again, because promises of multiplayer were one of the biggest complaints that people had weren't available at launch. And like, for example, No Man's Sky Next was only version 1.5, which was, let's see here, you're looking at the YouTube. Okay, you can load, please. You stupid son of a bitch. No Man's Sky Next was given a trailer in 2018. So this is 2 years after launch.
Mm-hmm.
And it launched July 24th, 2018. So 2 years they fumbled around in the dark. And tried to get things to better places, at least fulfilling some of the bigger promises. And the big one, the really big one that a lot of people had issues with, because this is a very, very, very big game, was no multiplayer. You didn't have anybody to do anything with. And because the world was so empty, that compounded your loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Having friends took the, admittedly, even back then, sparse, though they did make it more robust by Next. It wasn't as robust as it is now. God, it's full of so much now. But even the admittedly somewhat sparse conditions after making some bigger advancements were mitigated so much by having your friends with you. Because you could go around and do bullshit. You could kill each other on the surface of planets and giggle about it. Yes, acting sociopathic with your friends has been a test as old as time. There will always be those days where you're playing games that you screw over your friend just because it's funny that day.
Well, I'm certainly no stranger to that, given some of my antics.
Yes, we know. And I think at this point, most of the audience has probably heard at least half your stories. Tell them enough. But yeah, I would say 2018, when No Man's Sky Next dropped, was really where attitudes started shifting. You started to hear more positive press about it. And I'm not just talking about the normal sites, I'm talking about people. Word of mouth was like, hey, No Man's Sky's gotten a lot better since 2016. I started hearing that even in 2017 from my friends who had been playing it since launch. And from there, because that traction came back, because, hey, they actually brought in multiplayer. Really? Holy shit, let's go. That was a common sentiment. Holy shit, there's multiplayer in No Man's Sky now? I gotta at least try it out. And when more and more stuff got added, the Abyss update, the expeditions, everything else, people are like, wait a minute. What is all this stuff? I can't do all... Hello Games, why is there more stuff? I have heard joking complaints of, Hello Games, too much content, please stop. It's clearly a joke, because I don't think anybody in their community would want them to stop making the content they love. They do, however, want Hello Games to give them a way to pay them. Just Hello Games refuses.
Mm-hmm.
And the combinations of free update patch and let us pay you money, along with a community that I would say is actually a really healthy community. I mean, every community will have their toxic actors.
Yeah,
it's
there's,
not
there's
something you
shit
can
in
avoid.
everyone's yard.
Yeah. But the No Man's Sky community tends to be really wholesome.
Hmm.
You don't tend to hear about controversies from them and shit. And I think that that's to their benefit. It's made No Man's Sky an exceptionally welcoming game that you can play with your friends. You can play with randos if you want. I've done that. It's been kind of chaos and I love it. And if you don't want to engage with certain aspects of the game, like me, I'm not super interested in the survival / base building portion. It's not my cup of tea in a game. Into space and do shit in space. That is what I want to do. I want to do shit in space. And I want to be able to upgrade my ships without having to go on a planet if I can. Or if I go on a planet, I can do like things where I pick up a little bit of treasure, go back into space, go to one of the space, buy a better starship. Or whatever. I don't have to build a base and get resources and shit. Fuck that shit. I don't want to do that shit. That to me, if I'm playing by myself, that's boring. Maybe if I had some friends, it might be better.
Mm-hmm.
Not to imply that you guys aren't my friends.
But
when they got the mech suits, Monk,
mm-hmm.
when the exo mech suits hit, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to play this game now.
Mechs are
robots.
Yep, mechs are certainly a siren call.
And just so everyone knows this, I actually played No Man's Sky at launch.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I didn't exactly have the funds to play it any other way than with a Jolly Roger, but I did play it. So I got to experience the unfiltered 1.0 drop of No Man's Sky and understand exactly how much was missing.
Yeah. And
like, I will say, I think you have kind of undersold how much of a joke this game was at launch to a lot of people. It was a trash fire online. Even like your AI, or not AI, the generated models of monsters that would appear on places. You had that whole bad Jurassic Park corn theme playing over him. It was very accurate for what you would find in the game, what you would see in that meme.
I can't find the video anymore, but I could have swore I saw someone do a similar one to, but instead of using the Jurassic Park theme, it was using "Thus Spoke Zarathustra" as portrayed by the World's Worst Orchestra. Which, if you've never heard that track before, it is incredible, if also painful.
Incredible is all you needed there, Monk, because it certainly has no credibility.
Well,
but yes, it was a lot of the problems, though. They were also slightly compounded by, I think Sean Murray himself was a terrible spokesperson for this game because his interviews were awkward. It did not seem like he wanted to be in any of them. It really painted a bad picture of Hello Games in the early days.
With the big thing with there is Sean Murray realized that he had made too many promises and they couldn't be kept anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
However, I want everybody, anybody who has a modicum of interest in Hello Games or No Man's Sky in specific, look at Sean Murray's interviews from prior to the game's launch, where he's exceptionally enthusiastic but also somewhat vague. Look at his interviews just after launch, where he's exceptionally uncomfortable to be interviewed. And then watch an interview from around the time of any major patch update, any major update, starting from next. Just start at No Man's Sky next. Look at an interview there, and keep moving forward with things like the Abyss and Expeditions and Horizons and Prisms and all the other ones. and watch his confidence soar. Watch his spokesmanship become more refined. Watch his enthusiasm reinfect his smile. Watch as he sees that I fucked up in the beginning, and I apologized for fucking up eventually. And now I'm doing everything to make right what I fucked up. People like it, and it's making me and my people happy.
Oh yes, he definitely got better at the front man of the game as time went on. But I bring it up because I don't think people realized how crazy it was that a game with just this much ill will behind it at launch and just no real confidence in anyone behind it. They went silent for a long time after that initial launch before they spoke up again and started updating. So to see it go from that to what it is now, or even what it was 3 years ago, it's almost mind-blowing.
Well, the biggest thing here is, I know, Monk, you already pointed out that this or Final Fantasy 14 and A Realm Reborn are good examples of how, given the passion and the drive, you can redeem a bad game.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to point out, this is the same type of passion and drive that revitalized Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah,
Even before Phantom
for whatever
Liberty
reason,
came out.
a lot of people don't want to admit that.
Well, and I would argue that compared to Hello Games, who simply overpromised and underdelivered because they trapped themselves in a box, CD Projekt Red had it a little worse because it was shareholders, from what has been revealed, that kept pushing them to release the game now when they weren't ready. And eventually they just had to. And it resulted in that big lawsuit because it violated consumer rights in the EU.
Mm-hmm.
And it took CD Projekt Red apologizing and constantly working, making massive updates and changes, being passionate about the source material they got from Artal Sorian and Mike Pondsmith, and just pushing forward with that vision of, this isn't the game we wanted to make. We want to make the game better. Let's make the game better. And they did. And again, this is all before Phantom Liberty. Before anyone goes, oh yeah, Phantom Liberty's out now, of course it's better. No, fuck you. Even before the Edge Runner update that came out because of Cyberpunk Edge Runners to the anime, Cyberpunk 2077 had fixed all of its issues that weren't, personal taste related. Like, I just don't really like how this skill tree works, or I just don't like how the gunplay works. Okay, so you don't like that style of play, that's not for you. The actual technical issues and stuff that was promised that wasn't there, either they clarified and said, we just can't add that. That's just not going to happen, unfortunately, because this game can't support that, or it would be impossible to hook it in a way that works well. Or they came and said, yeah, we fixed that. All this shit that wasn't there, it's there now. And they made very clear, this is stuff we cannot add, even though we originally promised it, because it just would not fit in. It would not properly integrate with the game as it is now. So unfortunately, those pieces, we have to leave at the wayside. And then the other side, they went, all this, fucking fixed. Optimization, all this other stuff, fucking fixed. Bad AI, fucking fixed.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the police AI, they're still pretty shit, even with Phantom Liberty.
But the big reason I keep throwing that out there is, even with all of those fixes, you still see people using the state of the game as it was at launch as a way to bludgeon the way it is now, or pull 8, or when you correct them on that, pull 8. Yeah, but it should have been like that from the beginning. Which the worst thing that you can do in any sort of discussion is pull a yeah, but.
Yeah. It should have always been that way. Okay, it should have always been that way. this is a game that no one had ever attempted in that particular fashion before with that particular property. They had no idea how they were going to get the feel and look and the gameplay type they really wanted to do. Of course, there was some trial and error, and they weren't given enough time. Like, they even had to explode and rebuild the game from the ground up at one point. It's just... I know that people tend to take a very polarizing view about how games development in the games industry is. Like, oh, you should never ever crap on the developers because, you know, this is just kind of their job. They aren't necessarily responsible for... to an extent, in some cases, yes, developers are not responsible for some of the poor performance of the game that they've made insofar as functionality, because they're rushed by shareholders. They're rushed by the board of directors. They're rushed by, you know, executive decision makers. And that's shit. And that leads to things like crunch and to things like poor working environments and to games that have some game-breaking glitches because they weren't found because QA process wasn't given enough time or whatever. And that sucks. But there are just, for those, there are just as many developers who just don't care. They make a game because they're making a game, not because they have a passion for it. It's how they've decided that it's make profits first instead of making something awesome. Which, I'm going to refer back to Steve Jobs here. All the way back to Steve Jobs here. About why we saw lowering qualities in other types of industries, whether it's for goods or services. And he said, because the engineers, the designers, the people who were passionate about the project are no longer in charge. It's the people focused on making profit, like marketers, that are in charge at that point. And when it becomes more about money than the product suffers. So
but
there absolutely are developers who sure, their game should have been like that when it came out because they just focused on making something for profit than making the game. But that was not the case with CD Projekt Red, and in my opinion has never been the case with CD Projekt Red.
And to go a bit further, there are plenty who embody that whole those who go out looking for witches mode of thinking.
Yeah.
And when I see people still use the state of things in 1.0 to bludgeon the way Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky are now, what it is telling me is that they don't care about the reality of the situation. They just want a punching bag to make themselves feel relevant.
And because that contrarianism gets them immediate validation with an in-group that they find valuable. Not to mention the fact that you don't see a lot of people blaming Final Fantasy 14 compared to ARR. In fact, most people blame ARR for lackluster later stuff. Like, I'm like, what are you talking? Well, ARR did have that big ass amount of, main story quests between itself and Heavensward. This was because they were still finding their feet on how they wanted to do content. I would argue that the biggest down dip in Final Fantasy XIV these days is the oversimplification of how the game works, which is Yoshi P says he draws a lot of inspiration from WoW when it comes to ARR. This is one of the things he should not have drawn from WoW, which is the oversimplification of gameplay.
Oh wow.
I kid. But people make those. I think people make those responses to games like Cyberpunk 2077 and No Man's Sky because either they never plan to play those games. Like NMS has a great community, but it's a community that's very interested in a very specific niche. Let's be perfectly honest. No Man's Sky.
More likelihood, they only know of the game through the hyperbole.
Yes. And then the other part of that is it's a game that they don't have to worry about the community around it because it's a single player game. Because with something like Cyberpunk 2077, they can say the most inflammatory shit they want, all they want, because they're never actually going to have to encounter the community, since the community is all a bunch of single player gamers too, playing the game in single player.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I never actually have, there's no actual consequences for being an inflammatory little shit. And, you know, fair enough. Whereas with Final Fantasy XIV, if you're playing FF14 and you castigate the game in a way that isn't valid, because there are valid criticisms, then you'll get shit on by the entire online community. Now, there has been an issue of toxic positivity when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV's community, actually.
Yeah.
There are times where the community stands up for shit that they really shouldn't. Criticisms that are, and then there are those who have criticisms that are valid that still get shit on. Like when Zeppela said that she was not enjoying the game during Dawn Trail, she got massively shit on by the 14 community, and at least part of it, not all of it, obviously, because she's a very popular content creator from 14. And that's a different issue entirely, though. That's all community issues rather than game design issues.
Yeah.
In reference, insofar as game design and what happened with the design goes, people don't shit on 14 A Realm Reborn compared to 14.10 because the game is essentially two separate games. They're just so different in so many ways. Like the base DNA is close, but the actual fucking
I had
game
half
is
jokingly
just...
described 1.0 of the 1.0 version of FF14 as 11.2. And then I saw some of the behind the scenes remarks where I was not far off from reality.
Yeah. Whereas 14 A Realm Reborn is fairly different.
Yeah.
And then it was even because and again, this has to do with its different nature as an MMORPG.
Mm-hmm.
It is a separate game. Whereas with No Man's Sky, with Cyberpunk 2077, and other games that have done things like this, it's still the same game. And so they're more willing to make that comparison because they didn't make a brand new game and ship that instead. They just changed up the old game. And if I have to put it down to what it is, Monk, very, very simply, it's a genetic fallacy. Oh, because 1.0 is bad, the game will be forever bad. It's a genetic fallacy.
Pretty much. And we've seen this plenty of times, and a lot of times whenever I see it, the conclusion I end up coming to is someone cares more about maintaining that negative mindset rather than the reality that they claim to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, and the big reason why I said earlier that I think some people on the outside looking in took the wrong lessons is that they completely ignored the amount of work it took to get the game into the state that it's in now.
Yes.
In the same...
Not only the work, though, if you don't have the mindset of this game needs to be greater, needs to be better, I want this game to be better, even if you put in the work, it's not going to achieve that success.
Yeah, I mean, and on the subject of, people thinking that, oh, maybe Concord can pull a No Man's Sky, it's not impossible, but the problem with Concord versus No Man's Sky is that No Man's Sky had the hype. People got to No Man's Sky when it first came out, and this is crap. And they just left it alone until the game finally wasn't crap. Problem with Concord is that 5 people, maybe, if I'm being generous, wanted that game when they first saw it.
Yeah, nobody. There's a whole lot that can be said when it comes to the failings of Concord, and the failings were very much a case where even a blind man could have seen them coming. You know, releasing a hero shooter in a very crowded market, having a visual design that was just plain unappealing to look at, and to anyone saying, "Oh, you just want gooning material," it was ugly. It did not have a cohesive voice. It was an aping of 50s and 60s style sci-fi without any real direction towards it. You had a internal studio that was very much toxically positive, and a leadership who thought that who were deluded enough to think that they were making the next Star Wars. But to contrast with No Man's Sky, it's not just the hype, but also the fact that it was scratching a particular itch that wasn't being scratched enough. There's no shortage of hero shooters in the current market. And we're at a point where if somebody wants to make one, they have to go beyond just making a hero shooter. And because of that, something like Concord was never going to get the No Man's Sky treatment because, well, the leadership didn't have the humility, and it wasn't something people had actually asked for.
It's probably more likely we'll get No Man's Sky treatment for Mighty Number 9.
Nah.
Everybody
more
involved with that
likely
has tried to memory hole that shit.
Mighty Number Nope can remain Mighty Number Nope.
Like when
Also going for No Man's Sky, like, even in the state it came out in, however much people dunked on it, there was still something there to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It may have taken a long time to make that idea work, but it was there. You can't really say something like that about Concord.
So kind of like if No Man's Sky hadn't overpromised what it was going to deliver and then fallen short of those expectations, people would have probably thought of it as, it's decent, it's not bad.
It may have been a passable novelty at the time. I still think even without the overpromising, there were some issues with that launch. But still, there was something there.
That and something else that I think a lot of people forget is that before some of the expansions came along, Hello Games was, I think, about 4 people.
Yeah, that was not a AAA studio at all. It was a very small team.
I read something a while back, and I don't know how true this is, so take this with a grain of salt, but allegedly part of the problem for it releasing in such a sorry state was the fact that at the time, PlayStation, and possibly other consoles, did not have an early access thing going on, and so it could have been released in an early access state if it was a Steam exclusive, but because they didn't have early access for the other platforms they were trying to release it on simultaneously, they had to release it as 1.0 as opposed to 0.x.
Yeah. When it comes to the hype cycle, I know it's tempting to pin a lot of that on Hello Games, but I do think Sony deserves a good amount of the blame as well.
Yeah. It's hard to say how much blame, who deserves. I don't think anyone's come out and actually said it. But Sony definitely had their hand in there.
Yeah. I'm just saying a lot of people pin it entirely on Hello Games and try and have Sony act as if they had no part in that. I'm not.
Yeah, I think Sony was a bit at fault for trying to push it like this was some big AAA game someone was making, when that was never the case.
They were pushing it as a killer app for their platform. Yeah. Regardless of who gets what blame, that part can't be disputed.
Yeah.
and it was never going to be a game that could really be that. Just because it's not that kind of game that you can have that sort of broad crossover kind of appeal. Some game genres are going to be more niche than others just by default. That's not a criticism on them. That's just how things work. And when it comes to it, the big lesson that they ended up learning over the years was, of course, managing those expectations and not promising the moon. I really do think that when I look back at some of those old interviews, I think the ones that he was the most uncomfortable with were going on like late shows like Jimmy Kimmel and talking about it, or going on going on Joe Rogan's podcast and talking about it, doing these interviews with people who clearly are not within the gaming umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he did it with Conan O'Brien, that would have gone easier, because Conan's willing to make fun of himself about how little he knows about games. Or just
Conan O'Brien was a good sport about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people got mad at the whole clueless gamer thing, but that was the whole joke. But you know, guys like, and I don't know how much of a gamer Rogan is. I can't speak on that. Although I'd say you'd have an easier shot with him than with Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert. But the point is that those were people who there was no business doing that kind of interview or doing that kind of media. Just because the audience that's going to watch those kind of shows isn't going to be compatible with a game like this. And I have a feeling with how small Hello Games was, they didn't push for those kind of appearances. I realize that this is all me tinfoil hat, but that's just the vibe I got. But I would say one of the other things, you already mentioned the whole passion part when it comes to people taking the wrong lessons. The other part I'd say is humility, because in order to even fix something, you have to be willing to admit that you fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something a lot of game developers seem to be lacking these days.
I would say a lot of people in the creative process who are in bubbles have issues admitting that. Especially when you're surrounded by a culture of pinning the blame on other people. Yes, I'm throwing Hollywood under the bus with this kind of thing because it's so prevalent there as well. It's a very Soviet thing.
Struggle sessions? What? No, the big thing here is that being able to have the humility to put down your ego and go, yeah, I fucked up, we fucked up, we'll make it better, is a lost art almost in today's day and age, in both individuals and in the professionals.
Yeah.
And it's the people, but as we continually see, it's the people that have the wherewithal to drop ego, make that sincere apology. I stress sincere for a reason. And to make the sincere effort, again, sincere, to correct things that tend to achieve greatness. Yoshi P, Sean Murray with Hello Games, the entirety of CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk 2077. These three examples, the commonality is admission of guilt and acceptance of responsibility for the failure.
Could we also throw in Iwata when he willingly took a pay cut after the Wii U debacle?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's these great people, these great groups, these people who had a vision and had a drive and a passion to make something excellent, realized they fell short of the mark, apologized and took responsibility for their failure, and then said, "We will do better," and proceeded to do so. That's the important part.
Mm-hmm.
The passion and drive is what took them into greatness, and the acceptance of responsibility is what kept them from becoming soulless.
Mm-hmm. And the big reason I wanted to do that whole thing regarding blame is because we've seen countless times where a given game doesn't work out and it's blamed on some buzzword like macroeconomic headwinds, which no, I still don't know what that means. I don't think anyone does. Or blaming it on one that I particularly love tearing apart these days has been the marketing excuse. Because I've talked with plenty of people regarding my issues with people's inability to step up regarding the kind of entertainment that they want to see. You know, people saying, we need an alternative, and then not showing up. And whenever I confront them on this, and show them alternatives, the argument that they give is, these things need to be better marketed. I'm like, you're only are you saying that because you can't pin the blame on a collective in the form of marketing? Because that's what it often comes off to me. And you see this, like, when, just to use Concord as an example of this, they tried to go with a game like this can't doesn't have a place in a crowded market, which is just the marketing excuse in another coat of paint. Not to mention I'd say one of the biggest ways that a lot of games get a large amount of footprint these days is word of mouth. Especially through streaming. But again, it's a culture of excuses. Not to put too fine a point in it, but the devil made me do it. You know, blaming something that is some nebulous collective or some nebulous concept, so that you don't have to admit that you screwed up. And a lot of people who are looking for that turnaround for other projects that were significant failures don't have that humility. Because they've convinced themselves, working themselves into a shoot, that what they did was great and it's going to be this new classic and basically buying into their own hype. And as we learned from Scarface, never get high on your own supply.
Yep.
That and some people think that if they do this one thing, this magic audience will show up. And this is a mindset I even see in sports. How many times have there's been countless times of someone going, "Well, if we just get this one piece, then we'll be able to win championships."
I blame Field of Dreams. It gives sports people an invalid sense of if you build it, they will come.
I'd like to, but this predates even that movie. Although I did enjoy when they did that reference, a actual reference to that movie.
I have to do this, even though I hate this meme and its source. But One Piece is real because you said it.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. But humility
Your
and
own
passion, I think, is the strongest coda that we can have for something like this. But with that in mind, I think that's where we'll end this particular Odyssey, because otherwise we would just be listing off things that got added to NMS. But
I mean, we could do that for the next like 20 minutes.
yeah. But then we wouldn't stop at just 20 minutes, let's be honest. Now with that said,
True.
I will be back here for a couple things later today. I'm going to be doing an interview with the developer of Jump Rangers, which I had to correct him earlier because he thought I was doing it at noon Pacific time, and I had to explain to him, wait, we agreed at 5 p.m. your time. What the hell are you talking about? And much later tonight, I will be doing a game stream. I'm going to try and get Wandering Sword working again. I don't know why it kept crashing on me after opening the 1-year anniversary package. So that will be an interesting thing.
Might look that up.
I did. I think there seemed to be some issue with older saves on newer patches. I think that's what caused it. So fortunately, I wasn't too far in, so it's not like it was a deal breaker. But
yeah,
these things, you know how it is with programming. One little change can throw everything for a loop. But
99 bugs in the code, 99 little bugs. You take one down, patch it around, 138 bugs in the code.
Yep.
Yep.
So please.
Or my favorite meme. Code isn't working. Programmer, I have no idea why it's not working. Code is working. Programmer, I have no idea why it's working.
And I am a programmer. I relate to that meme wholeheartedly.
I stopped for my own mental health years ago.
I never ever will do it as a fucking profession. I would want to suck start a Mossberg if I did that.
Look, I've mentioned this elsewhere, but the point where I was like, I need to step away from this was when I was seeing full-on hallucinating code while I was out getting groceries.
That part was funny when I heard about that from you.
Yeah.
But that's Rails.
Yeah, but the plan is to try and do Wandering Sword because well, given what's going to be coming next month, it's going to be relevant. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.